Hello, this is Professor Kyle Mack, and this is your 11-1 lesson intro in 5 minutes. The big concepts that we'll be covering in 11-1 are linear notions, planar notions, and intersections. Linear notions are any mathematical concept that relates to lines. So if it's a line, it has to do anything with a line, including things like points, line segments, rays, so like portions of a line, then you're talking about a linear notion. Planar notions are any mathematical concept that relate to planes. So if it falls on a plane, it's part of a plane, or that it has to do with planes whatsoever, it's a planar notion. And then finally we talk about intersections. An intersection is a location or set of locations where two objects touch or overlap. You can have lines, you can have planes, you can have lines and planes that are all intersecting. And so it only makes sense that we would talk about that as we're talking about linear and planar notions. Alright, so here's how all the different terms and concepts lie within these three major constructs. Under linear notions, we're going to talk about points, lines, planes, collinear points, the concept of being between, line segments, and rays. Most of these terms you probably know. A couple of them may need some extra explanation. Collinear points are points that all fall within the same line. A point that's between two other points is the point that is a set of collinear points, but it's the one in the middle. With planar notions, you have things like planes, the concept of being coplanar, which means basically it's a line segment, ray, or point, a set of those within the same plane. You have this concept of skew lines. This is two sets of lines that will not intersect and are not contained within the same plane. Then you have concurrent lines. Concurrent lines are lines that basically will intersect, but they'll only intersect at a point where two planes also are intersecting. So it's basically like lines that intersect but are not part of the same plane. And then the next thing you have is you have this concept of parallel lines. Parallel lines can either be parallel because their planes are parallel to one another, or they're on the same plane but will never intersect. And then finally you have this concept of intersections. Lines intersect at a point, planes intersect at a line. And then we talk about angles, because angles are made at intersections. So then we'll talk about sides of an angle, the vertex, which is where the actual intersection is occurring, and the concept of adjacent angles. We measure with a protractor and we measure in degrees. There's actually minutes and seconds as well, which we will talk about, but degrees is going to be the major thing that we're going to look at. We also have this concept of either being an acute, right, or obtuse angle. And then finally we're going to talk about perpendiculars. Remember, we have perpendicular lines and we can have perpendicular planes. And then we have this concept of a dihedral. Dihedrals are actually lines that we can look at between two intersecting planes, and then we can measure those dihedrals to consider the angle of the actual planes and the way in which they're intersecting. So that's all of the information that we're going to cover in 11-1.